On a clear day, rise and look around you, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star. You'll feel part of every mountain, sea, and shore, where you can hear from far and near a world you've never heard before. And on that clear day, on that clear day, you can see forever and ever more. You can see forevermore. You can see forevermore, forevermore.
Welcome to Rhythm and Word, our weekly digital witness. This week, we'll begin our journey in the book of Exodus, found in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. I'll be reading from chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. Listen now for God's word to God's people. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water. And the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and the water will come out of it so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Holy wisdom, holy word. Thanks be to God. Years ago, the late author and journalist Barbara Ehrenreich described her 6-month experiment living across the country as a minimum wage worker in her book, Nickeled and Dimed, on Not Getting By in America. Among her accounts is her experience in Maine working for a house cleaning service. She describes co-worker Holly as, quote, 23, married for almost a year, who managed to feed her husband, herself, and an elderly relative for $30 to $50 a week. On her apparent sickliness, Ehrenreich writes, quote, "The relevant point about Holly is that she's visibly unwell. possibly whiter on a daily basis than anyone else in the state. We're not just talking Caucasian here. Think bridal gowns, tuberculosis, and death, end quote. One afternoon, while crossing the yard of a client's home, Holly stepped into a hole and twisted her ankle so severely, she even heard it crack. Ehrenreich begs over and over that they take her to a doctor, but Holly strongly refuses, fueled by the fear that she will be let go from the one source of income that barely allows her to make ends meet. Seeking medical attention would cause the other shoe to drop, as she'd seen in the case of other former co-workers. Short-term healing and long-term well-being to Holly existed on two totally different, non-intersecting planes, never to join for the greater good. Grace seemed too great a risk. Her ankle and her position in society just too weak to bear such a leap of faith. In Exodus 17, we come to know the wilderness as a place of deep thirst. According to the text, at least 10 weeks and many treacherous footsteps ago was the miraculous defeat of the Egyptian army by the might of the Lord through the staff of Moses parting the Red Sea, a story with which we are familiar. And then was the experience of divine intervention. Then was redemption. Now, a bit after that, hunger emptied a people of sustenance and hope, and God brought forth the bread of heaven. But now, where we meet them, now is thirst, gripping its tight, oppressive fist around the throats of weary travelers with somewhere to go and not a clue of how to get there on their own. For a people that knew only the pervasive struggle of slavery and oppression, their doubt that life held any real promise for them is not a terribly difficult idea to grasp. The Hebrews, as the budding nation of Israel, was, through the wilderness, being created. As the universe was not created in one day by God, neither was a nation liberated in one day through the grace of God, working to unfold their promise-filled future step by excruciating step. It would take some time and experience for them to recognize or to reimagine themselves as liberated beings with a life of promise and freely accessible goods at their disposal. In other words, living in Pharaoh's land under constant fear of punishment, mostly unprovoked, these oppressed people were unaccustomed to waiting for the other shoe to drop, just like Holly of our day. To receive a lashing after a hard day's work, to die of dehydration after the spectacle of a trek through a parted sea. So the Israelites despair at their own thirst, and then they see Moses as the apt target for blame. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? To kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst. The only point of identification for these oppressed people is with their thirst. Even in the midst of miraculous encounters, of the powerful intervention of the God who transcends all things, only the immanent reigns. And what is immanent is thirst. Impulse and urge is the only real constant in which to trust, and the only way in which the Lord can become real to them. At this point in the wilderness is for the Lord to respond to their physical need. To be connected with the Israelite struggle in the wilderness is to know thirst. To borrow a concept from scholar Terence Frethiam, the Lord is cosmic victor of creation within the struggle in the wilderness. God, in the natural order, provides life and blessing to the people rather than devastation and destruction. The Israelites know thirst, and God provides them a means through which to know faith even better. The Lord is responsive in the wanderings of the wilderness. The people seek to test the Lord and confine God's power to God's ability to respond to Israel's demands. But instead of cutting them off, God's grace extends to them through Moses' staff when it meets the rock. The Lord creates a nation amid a wilderness and does not lead it to oases. No, God does not estrange the Israelites from struggle. As Frethium observes, if they cannot discern God's presence in the ordinary through faith, they will deny God's activity in the extraordinary. What is more, extraordinary things hover over the horizon. For the same God who provided water in the wilderness will create order from chaos through the gift of the law on Mount Sinai. Just as God created the earth, God was creating social order among the Israelites, preparing them to live as a people of faith born through struggle. With God, indeed, things are more than what they seem. An enslaved person is not merely a slave, but a divinely chosen agent due to inherit the blessings of liberty, land, and nationhood. A rock is not just a rock, but a source of refreshment and living water. A staff is not just a staff, but an instrument in the revival of life. A group of people is not just a group of people, but a nation living in the midst of God's covenant. And a wilderness is not just a wilderness, but a place of encounter with God. The Lord was, is, and will be forever the source of creation, redemption, and sustenance. We have known thirst, and we will know thirst. We have walked through our own wildernesses, and we will walk through wildernesses. Chaos will trouble us, and we will scramble for some sense of order. And God will always walk with us, standing on rocks untapped. God will succeed as we struggle to muster faith, to abide in hope that all our needs shall be satisfied. The Lord wants us to walk obediently through the stages of the wilderness, through the stages of life, from the temporal to the eternal. We will test God, and we will quarrel with one another along the way. But walking God's path, even through the wilderness, will show us that God's triumph is what wins over anything that threatens us. Keep the faith.